Winter storm warnings and ice storm warnings from Texas to Tennessee. A little bit of a cheap thrill snow last night, maybe another cheap thrill snow tonight for parts of eastern Pennsylvania to southern New England, and the bitter cold shot that is coming in quick and going out quick is still on schedule to arrive on Friday and bottom out Saturday morning. Weather across the rest of the U.S. is quiet. And we are not quiet here on the Joe and Joe Weather Show, which is brought to you by Omni True Value Hardware at 1226 North Wellwood Avenue in West Babylon. They've got salt, they've got sand, and come the springtime, they'll have mulch and topsoil. In the meantime, they still have plenty of winter weather products to get you through the winter, the few days of winter. And then they'll have all you need this spring to make sure your home and garden and your business landscape looks absolutely terrific. 631-756-1125. And you can't find better prices anywhere. And the website is
OmniTrueValue.com.
Yeah.
Good evening, Joe.
Good evening. So, first question I have for you is, what did you wind up with last night? Because I saw a few people say they had a coating to, or as one of my snow removal guys that I work with on Long Island said, he had 0.15 inches of snow measured on his windshield.
Well, I guess that's about the size of it on my deck, which faces to the north. It did get whitened up a bit, but the driveway was all blacktop. I can tell you that both my son and daughter's schools, where they teach, 2-hour delays on both of them. And
you're not serious.
One was, well, he teaches up in Orange County across the Bear Mountain Bridge. So I don't know. Sometimes they pick up, a little bit more than what I get. She's up in the area around New Paltz, so it's possible, I suppose, that they picked up just enough to, coat the ground, coat the roadways, and make things a little slick and slippery. But it was no big deal. I had a feeling that it had snowed because in our bedroom, the deck is right adjacent to the bedroom. And this morning, it seemed a bit brighter when I looked out in the direction of the window, even though we have shades or shutters. And I said, I'll bet you it snowed. I'll bet you it snowed. I opened up the shades, and sure enough, the deck was all white. And, just like your friend on Long Island, maybe, that much, maybe. And we might have another shot at that tonight. I mean, maybe
actually the latest European, which I'll bring up on the screen. I pulled up the snow map from the European, so we've done it so many times this winter. My God! All right, well that's the satellite, but let's go to the snow map courtesy of Pivotal Weather, and actually, they have on its latest run. Anywhere from 1.9 inches at Long Branch, 1.7 at Philadelphia, 2.1 at Toms River, 2.4 at Vineland, New York City 0.4, Yonkers 0.4, Bridgeport 0.5, Brentwood 0.8. Yippee!
So maybe the streak will end tonight.
It's
in New York City, maybe. Yeah.
Or a plain yellow pumpkin to become a golden carriage. Impossible.
Then again, this looks like I'm out of it. I mean, well, it doesn't look like I'm going to see. Well, maybe I'll see the same amount that I saw this morning.
Don't they have to get a tenth in order for the streak not to happen? Don't they have to get a tenth of an inch by midnight tonight?
I don't know. I'm looking here at Mark G. He said no accumulation, Joe Rayo. Had a half inch and accumulated on roads, driveways in the hills. Roads were salted. I'm near you in West Central Connecticut. Well, you may be near me in West Central Connecticut, but
some places did get that. Let's not get into a dither here over a couple of tenths here.
Yeah.
Everybody's so touchy.
I looked out the window at 6:30 or 7 o'clock this morning out on my driveway, and the driveway was wet. what else can I tell you? If my driveway is wet, the road was wet. But again, maybe for some other areas, slightly more elevated. I'm up at about 450, 500 feet. Maybe I needed to go another couple of 100 feet higher to get a good sticking snow even on some of the roadways, or at least the secondary roadways. So, you're right. What are we arguing? What are we arguing for? It's a lousy tenth or two-tenths of an inch of snow.
And I have to. This type of system, if this were a snowy winter, just to illustrate the difference, in this type of winter, if this were a snowy winter and we were getting a system like this, I would have no problem probably going for a few inches for everybody, because that's what would happen. You would get. This is one of those types of things where you would get an upside surprise in a snowy winter. But
right.
the way things have gone so far, I mean, there's no way I would even venture to try and pull off something like that. And as far as the European amounts are concerned for Central and South Jersey, giving a couple of inches, I would probably cut it in half. But look, I don't even know how to quite say this. I guess ambivalent is the word, because usually by this time we would have had 4 or 5 storms under our belt, and we would be maybe trying to figure this out with a little more seriousness. I've just gotten ambivalent now. Here we are at the end of last day of January.
Yeah, it's one of those winters, Joe. Sometimes you get a winter like this where it's kind of like you get a brand new toy and you stick the battery in, but the battery doesn't work, or it's run down or whatever. And then there are other winters like what you just said, where it'll snow at the drop of a pin. Even minor storms bring, an inch or two in some cases. This winter just doesn't want to work. In fact, if you give me sharing capabilities, I'll show you a CPC outlook that's going to make everybody who is a snow lover or winter weather lover
cringe.
Cry. Yeah, cringe.
Cringe and cry.
Yeah.
Well, okay, so you're hold on a second. I'm sorry, I screwed you up here. Hold on.
You didn't screw me up.
No, I did. I minimized you. Now you're back to normal. So go ahead. Share away. And go ahead.
Okay. And meanwhile, thank you.
Knock yourself out.
Thank all of you on the chat board who came to my talk last night and were very complimentary. It was a pretty good group, and had some fun talking about the weather and how it has evolved on television and radio, and even going further back into the late 1800s. What am I trying to show here? Oh, I know what I'm trying to show.
While you're figuring out what you're showing, I just want to at least acknowledge that we have a super chat hit from Anthony Sparacchio, wishing us a good evening, and a good evening back, Anthony, and thank you for hitting super chat. Oh, isn't that just lovely? Lovely.
Oh, dear me. Tomorrow's the first day of February. Thursday, of course, is Groundhog Day. And I'm showing you the 8 to 14 day temperature outlook because the 6 to 10 map doesn't look all that much different than what I'm showing you here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So the CPC, the Climate Prediction Center, is indicating that in our part of the country, except for all of you who do not live in the Northeast, but in the Northeast, including New York and Boston and Philadelphia, there is at least a 60 to 70% probability of above normal temperatures, which is pretty high on that scale for the beginning of the month of February. And this takes us all the way out, Joe, to Valentine's Day. So if you believe this,
the first half of the month is done. There's nothing. There is nothing in the long range. Not even a glimmer of hope. Every run is exactly the same. That's the thing. That's the thing that gets me, is that every run it's the same. Maybe it's off by a few miles. I have not seen anything change in days and days and days.
And just leaning to above normal probabilities for precipitation across much of the country. The only place that has something where it's likely to be above, not even likely. I mean, this still would be leaning only about 40 to 50% out over the Central Plains, Missouri and Arkansas, Oklahoma, northern sections of Louisiana, northern Mississippi, and western sections of Kentucky and Tennessee, southern Illinois. Everywhere else, it's just basically either you're going to get a little precip on average over the course of February 8th to the 14th, and then near normal out over the Rockies, down here over Texas. It is such a bland pattern. Now, of course, as we're about to talk about in the short term, meaning right now, it's anything but bland. There are many places in Texas and in Arkansas, for example, and even up into parts of Tennessee that are in the throes of either ice and or snow and making life miserable for the people who live down there. But overall, as we look ahead for the first 2 weeks of February, it is El Blando or El Bordo. It's nothing really that's going to be dramatic or dynamic over these next 2 weeks.
Welcome to everybody on the chat board tonight. Welcome to those of you who are lurking in the background. The Joe and Joe Weather Show is on Monday through Thursday at 7:35, Sundays at 11 a.m. However, there are some schedule changes, so we will tell you about them now. And it won't matter because I'll still get 100 messages on Messenger asking, is there a show tonight? Is there a show tonight? So here's the schedule, all right? There will be no show tomorrow night. I am going to be on the road. So we're no show tomorrow night. There will be a show Thursday and possibly Friday, okay? But there will be no show this coming Sunday. So just mark that down on your Joe and Joe weather calendar. So I will repeat that. There will be no show tomorrow, Wednesday. There will be a show on Thursday. There possibly will be a show on Friday. There will be no show on this coming Sunday. So there you have it.
That means we have the weekend off.
We do.
Oh,
we do.
Okay.
And the chairman, Scott Briller, hitting Super Chat tonight. Is there anywhere this system can overperform in a snowless winter? Well, 5 flakes, I think, would be considered overperformance. Right?
I guess.
And yes, Adam Lowe, it is very sad when Las Vegas gets more snow than the East Coast. They got a good coating of snow there yesterday. Of course they did. All right, absolutely. Why not? So, anyway, I got a couple of things I want to show, though, with respect to the long range, Mr. Rayo.
All right, this will be very quick. I've got the hazardous, from Climate Prediction Center, I have the hazardous temperature map up for frigid temperatures, or God only knows we'd be seeing abnormally warm temperatures, which wouldn't be too off base for what we've seen all of this month of January. But as you could see, from the 8th to the 14th, no hazards posted. Now, you think about all of those other Februaries of the past 20, 30, 40 years where you move into February and there are places that have bitterly cold or frigid temperatures. And here you see no hazards posted for any kind of frigid cold temperatures, at least during the second week of February, taking us up to Valentine's Day. So that's in terms of temperatures. How about precipitation? Well, there is an area of possible heavy precip from the 8th to the 10th of February, encompassing a broad area of the southeastern states up to about the mid-Atlantic area. That also includes you down in Georgia, Joe. I'm sure you'll be back by then. And talking about also a slight risk, just a slight risk, of some heavy precip hitting central and parts of southern California from the 11th through the 14th of February. Now, snow. Where is the snow? Well, there you go. Slight chance or slight risk of heavy snow over, of all places, the desert Southwest, northern sections and central sections of Arizona, also portions of western New Mexico, and a good chunk of Utah and western sections of Colorado. By the way, I have a friend who lives in the high desert region of Arizona, and she was talking about possibly 2 to 5 feet of snow falling where she is. And I said, "My God, do you have it?" And this is a place with very rough, very primitive roads, no paved roads. I said, "What are you going to do up there if you get even just 2 feet of snow? Have you any way of getting rid of it?" And she said, the week before her husband died, they had purchased a tractor and practiced on it, and they were having a lot of fun. They were kind of giddy. This was back last summer, so I hope she's just as giddy, because it's going to be all her when the snows arrive where she is, to get on that tractor and try to plow a couple of feet of snow off of her property. And of course, the usual skinny area in the Sierra Nevadas of California, where there's a slight risk of heavy snow from the 11th to the 14th. We'll close out on wind. Anybody want to know where the winds are going to be? Of course, out west in the western United States, with the same system that probably will be bringing the risk of heavy snow, 11th to the 14th of February, covering much of California, Nevada, extreme western Arizona, and southern sections of Oregon. So there you are. By the way, for those of you who are watching Jeopardy tonight, the final Jeopardy question was, of the states with 6 letters, which 2 of those states are right next to each other or border each other? And through a crazy process, at first I said 6 letters. I said Alaska, Hawaii,
Nevada, and Oregon.
Right, but here's how my
I didn't
mind
watch the
worked.
show.
Here's how my mind worked. When they said 6 letters, I said Alaska. Alaska has 6 letters, and then you think about, oh, and Hawaii, but they don't border each other. And then I said, stupidly, Denver. I said, wait a minute, Denver, 6 letters, but it's not a state, it's a city. And I said, Colorado. And from whatever reason, I thought of Colorado, and then I said, Nevada. And then when I said Nevada, I said, oh, and Oregon. So I did get the answer. But as Renato, he said, by the time you went through all of that, their time would have been up, and you never would have been able to put anything down on the screen. So you would have lost. I said, yes, but it was a victory, a moral victory, because all three players didn't get it either. So anyway, yeah.
All right.
So that's it. That's all I've got to show.
Okay. Well, so I will now show you what I have to show. And we'll go to the Pacific sea surface temperatures. And this is what is left of La Niña. And you can still see that there is an area in the equatorial Pacific where we have below normal ocean water temperatures. Okay, but it has shrunk considerably, and the intensity of this La Niña has shrunk considerably in the last number of weeks. Most of those colors represent temperatures that are about 1 to 2 degrees below normal. Now, take a look at this, and this is the 7-day trend of ocean water temperatures in that region. And you will notice now in that green area, it's 0 or just slightly above 0 trend, but there's a large part of the equatorial Pacific where the La Niña is running 1 to 2 degrees below normal, where the warming is running at a half a degree to as much as 2 degrees per week. Okay, per week. That's the 7-day trend. So if this trend continues and you just kind of want to even everything out, the La Niña should be gone by mid-February.
It's collapsing.
It is.
It's just gone.
But here's the problem. The La Niña may be gone, but as Joe, you know, and you've spoken about this on a couple of occasions, the atmosphere has muscle memory. And it's going to look like a La Niña pattern for a little while before it finally, all the process of the slow grinding process of an overall pattern change, as as impacted by La Nina work their way through the atmosphere. So that pretty much, to me, says that unless something, something like this week happens where you get this little window that opens, and of course the setup this week has been pretty crappy. We get a bitter cold air mass that is going to be around only slightly longer than if you were baking a cake in the oven. So maybe you get a little window there, but it's hard for me to imagine to see any kind of really significant pattern change to something active at this point, even through the month of March. I'm pretty much, in my mind, I'm kind of throwing in the towel here because I don't see it. I just don't see how we're going to change any of this given the parameters that we're dealing with.
And did you see in a tweet yesterday or last night, Dr. Jewett Cohen said, I'm now going to try, in order to try to get snow and cold in here, he's now going with reverse psychology.
Oh, okay.
In other words, all these weeks he's been showing, he's been grasping at straws, the elongated upper vortex, the signs that it's bitter cold in China, this and that, and this could lead to colder and snowier conditions eventually. So now he just threw the towel in on that and said, so now he's talking about how terrible the whole pattern is. He showed last night the GFS showing that at least for the next 3 weeks on the longer term runs, there's absolutely no sign, zilch of any potential significant snow in any part of the eastern United States. And so he says, well, it didn't work when I was trying to, rev things up here. So now he's just going to say, it ain't happening. It ain't happening. It ain't happening. And then maybe he's hoping that by saying that the models will say, oh, you don't think it's going to happen? Take this and have a major sudden decline of temperatures, and then suddenly a snowstorm will pop up literally out of nowhere. So,
yep,
that's how it is with Dr. Cohen.
All right, so let's at least look to see where we've got stuff going on tonight, and we do. I mean, we have winter storm warnings up for much of central and northeastern Texas. And now, in addition to that, they've added some counties, looks like in and around the Dallas-Fort Worth area. They've got ice storm warnings in effect. And also we have ice storm warnings in the cut Arkansas on a diagonal and go northeast. So the northeastern portion of it on a diagonal under a ice storm warning. So is western Tennessee. So is northwest Mississippi. We have some flood watches up in parts of Louisiana, west central Louisiana, and east Texas. Around all of that, we have winter weather advisories that actually extend all the way up into West Virginia and some counties in Western Virginia, with what's going on for a little snow and a little sleet and freezing rain. In the Northeast, we have the colors that you see in New York State from the Catskills northward and Vermont are the wind chill watches, Joe. Wind chill watches. Okay? And other than dense fog advisories across the Gulf, the central and eastern Gulf Coast, and some dense fog advisories in southwestern Idaho and southeastern Oregon, a couple of winter weather advisories in northwestern Montana, some freeze watches in California. There's the rest of the country at the moment is pretty quiet. There's an absolute absence of major storms, and over the next 2 weeks, it appears to me that there's going to be a general absence of major storms across the U.S.
Right, I would have to agree. And it's interesting to me that they've already posted up across upstate New York, just north. I mean, right over the border in across from Orange County, up in Ulster and Sullivan County. They already have wind chill watches up, or I suppose that impending wave of cold and wind that's going to be hitting the Northeast first thing in the morning on Friday, and lasting. I got to tell you, it's weird that something so sharp and so intense is also going to be so short-lived, because we on Sunday, um, my wife has a meeting. We both belong to a local German American club here in Putnam Valley, and I said to her, as bitter and frigid as it's going to be Friday night and Saturday, when we go to the meeting on Sunday, it may have very well bounced back to 40 degrees
Yeah.
with sunshine.
Yeah.
It'll be like a return to spring on Sunday after a brief visit to the Arctic on Saturday and Friday night.
No, the bounce back is going to be almost as incredible, maybe in some ways even more impressive than the actual arrival of the cold air. And
Right.
all of this is being set up by these flat waves to our south. I mean, we've got this endless, it's funny because going back, I don't know how many days ago it was that the GFS had this massive overrunning pattern from Maine down to Georgia and into Alabama and Mississippi. Well, it got the idea right. It just got it got the placement wrong and the intensity wrong. I mean, it basically had an snow and ice storm up and down the East Coast that was going to last 36 hours or more in some places. So that never happened. So that wasn't going to be. But we do have this frontal boundary that is set up from Texas northeastward into the mid-Atlantic states, and you got all this moisture running along it. The problem is there's nothing. There's nothing coming down, nor from the northern jet to amplify these things, nor is any of the energy that's coming out of the southwest is going to amplify until it's way out into the Atlantic. I mean, it's as flat as a board here. So we're getting these waves. The first one that happened last night, we've got one coming tonight. The third one on Thursday is going to pass even further south. It is not an issue. That's the one that becomes the major storm that pulls all the cold air down. But I mean, this is the only reason why this is a big deal is because the moisture is impressive down in Texas, or at least it has been from time to time on the radar, depending on when you watch this stuff develop and move. So here's the latest stuff. And we've got rain that's moved into Tennessee and Alabama. We've got freezing rain in the western part of the state and back over to Arkansas. Some places in Texas that are under the winter storm warning are getting a bit of a break, but they've got another surge of moisture that's going to be coming in for tomorrow. But here in the Northeast, at least for now, starting to see a little bit of activity on the radars, but most of that's aloft. That's back to the west. So they got less than 4 hours to get that tenth of an inch in New York City. WPC. I have a couple of. What's this stuff? Oh, this is the actual surface map. So let's take a look at this. So here's your front that's out to the east. Now, fronts, somebody asked to just sort of to explain it. I mean, fronts are basically boundaries between cold and warm air. And whichever one is advancing, when a cold air mass is advancing, you've got a cold front that's running ahead of it. When you've got warm air that's advancing, then you have a warm front that marks that boundary. And the boundary is usually determined by where you see, you look at the observations and you primarily look at the wind direction and the temperatures. When you see wind shifts, for example, if you look in Virginia, most of the winds here, the wind barbs are all north. Okay, you go in North Carolina, on the other side of this frontal boundary, all the winds are from the south. So that tells you that there's a frontal boundary in between. And the temperature difference, well, it's in the 30s to around 40 to the north of that, where the north wind is blowing. Where the south wind is blowing, it's in the upper 50s and low 60s. So you've got a temperature contrast that's set up. You've got the wind direction is also is the other indicator that's telling you that there's a frontal boundary. If you look, you look back in eastern Tennessee, for example, northwest Georgia, cutting Alabama in half. Now on the east side, if you look in Georgia at 4 o'clock this afternoon, it was in the mid 60s to low 70s. I was in the 60s today for a short time. Mid 60s to low 70s on one side. You jump on the Tennessee side, and it's in the 40s. You go to central Tennessee and points westward, you're in the low 30s and even the 20s. So over a period of hours, you'll notice as you plot these that there's been very little change in the position of that stationary front. Because nothing's moved, nothing's changed, there's been no wind shift. You just got this stalled frontal boundary that runs all the way down into the Gulf of Mexico. And of course, with this high that's in Oklahoma, cold air is pulled down into Texas. I mean, this is really set up for, it really did set up nicely. I don't mean that, maybe, all right, let me change the word because then somebody might say, how can you say it's nice? No, it's not nice. But it's set up almost perfectly for an icing event here from Texas northeast to Tennessee.
Yeah, that's the worst thing. I would prefer. I've said it before. I prefer a quarter of an inch of 6 or 8 inches of snow versus a quarter of an inch of ice, or even a tenth of an inch of ice. Can't do anything with ice. Snow, yeah, ice, no. So it's going to be rough. Incidentally, the reporter tonight, of course, we've all been hearing about what has been happening in Memphis over the last week or so. But tonight, I guess the reporter who was down there for that actually had to shift gears and did a report on the weather, on the icy conditions that were in the Memphis area. And I'm saying to myself, well, I'm sure he wasn't prepared to do this. He was probably preparing to talk about something else, but he was there. Memphis is iced over, so they must have told him, "Look, you're switching. You're gonna talk about weather tonight," and that's the way it is down there. And Joe just brought up the map, and you could see now this is the probability for snow, Joe. 2 inches or more.
No, this is the probability for a tenth of an inch of ice accretion.
Ouch.
Of freezing rain. The snow map doesn't show anything as far as snow is concerned.
No.
It's really more of a freezing rain event than anything else. And this is a tenth of an inch of ice accretion, the same as what we had last night. So that hasn't changed. And this carries us through the forecast period is 72-hour forecast period that takes us to Friday evening. It'll be over with long before that. But still, we're seeing 80 to 100% probability of at least a tenth of an inch in Texas, in Arkansas, back into western Tennessee. The quarter of an inch ice accretion, you've got two large areas of 50% or greater for a quarter of an inch. And there's even, I punched it up before, Joe, there's actually, this is only 20 to 30% in the darker green for a 50%, for a half an inch of ice accretion. And a quarter of an inch is enough to bring down trees and power lines.
Yes.
A half an inch can bring down whole limbs. So we'll hope those areas don't get the half an inch of liquid because that would be terrible. And as far as the long range with respect to snow, there ain't nothing. Oh, look, Joe, on Saturday, Friday into Saturday, WPC has a 30 to 50% chance of at least a few inches of snow out at 40 east of 40 degrees north out in the ocean.
A fish storm.
Yes, exactly. And there's nothing. I was going to say there's nothing in the long range going right into next Monday into Tuesday.
And wouldn't that be more a case of cold north or northwesterly winds blowing from off of the mainland, the northeastern United States, out over an unusually warm or warmer than normal ocean to produce that effect of snow that is just adjacent to the coastline?
I'm sorry, Joe. Repeat the question again. I missed the beginning.
The snow that you just showed, the probability of snow that's off our shoreline.
Right.
Wouldn't that be more of a function of the cold north or northwest winds blowing over the mainland out over an abnormally mild Atlantic Ocean? Kind of like a lake effect, if you will. But
right. You just have to go far enough offshore to experience it.
Right.
So, like, in other words, you have to take like one of those cruises to nowhere and go past the Baltimore Canyon. That would be fun this time of year with a screaming north wind at 40 to 50 knots offshore.
Yes.
Yeah, sure. I would just run to do that. So let's run through. This is the other problem here is trying to figure out which short range model has the best idea. You know what I did? I just kind of said everybody from eastern Pennsylvania to southernmost New England, including New Jersey and Long Island. Maybe somebody gets a coating to an inch out of this. I really didn't want to go the road of the European with the 2 to 3 inches that it just threw out. But you can see what the NAM is doing. It's got this. One of the things I have noticed, though, is that the last couple of days is that the models have not really handled what's on the radar very well. I mean, this is supposed to be right now, okay? And if we look at the radar back again, I mean, it looks a little bit more loaded on the radar than what the models have been doing. So this latest round of precip suddenly starts to gel up a little bit because you got this little wave that develops off the North Carolina coast. And you can see that there's this. This is at 11 p.m. and this is at midnight. You start to see these patches of blue, and then they enhance a little bit as we go through the overnight. And this is tomorrow morning at 7 a.m. It's snowing over Long Island. It's snowing in Central and South Jersey. If the NAM is right, some of the other models have it a little further north, and the bottom line is it's very light precip here. It's hard for me to imagine that you're going to get much of anything out of this. Then that goes away, and then of course you see the next surge of freezing rain tomorrow in Texas, moving up into southern Oklahoma and Arkansas. This is the last of it, and then that goes east, but that never comes anywhere close to us. So once we get whatever we get tonight into tomorrow morning, the weather's going to be dry. Meanwhile, I'm going to be straddling the fence here with rain on tomorrow, actually tonight. Looks like some rain moves in between now and 1 a.m. Then that goes out, and then there's a break, and then there's maybe more rain coming tomorrow night into Thursday as this last wave goes by. And the rain looks fairly significant across Tennessee and into North Carolina. That low goes way out underneath, and at this point, the Arctic front, this is Thursday evening, so if you'll, from the isobars, Joe, there's your Arctic boundary, okay, and there's the high that's coming down. Right. So then Friday morning, the front almost gets lost. I mean, I think it's, just judging by the way the isobars are kinked, it's right about here. So I'm going to lean against, I sort of mentioned that maybe there might be a snow squall when the front goes by early Friday morning. I'm starting to wonder whether that's going to be the case, just the way this whole thing is lined up. It's hard. It doesn't seem to me that this is a snow squall type case.
No, there's in the upper atmosphere, there's no, as you would call it, a V.
Yeah, you don't have that.
Sign of, yeah. This thing just going to, like a bowling ball, it's going to kind of roll down across the northernmost part of the United States, northern New England, and it's just wide enough and concentrated enough to have all of that frigid cold air, and it's just going to roll in and just as quickly roll right out. And as I said, the amazing thing is how much warmer it's going to seem or feel on Sunday as opposed to what we're going to experience Friday night into a good part of Saturday.
So the challenge now becomes, how cold does it get Saturday morning? And I think that is going to depend on two things. First off, the front goes by Friday morning. The wind starts to really pick up from the north. I think we're going to have a mostly north or north-northwest wind for the daytime Friday and into Friday night. Now, what might keep the temperatures from going below zero in New York City is, and this seems to find a way to happen every time we get these super cold air masses, Joe. Look at what happens to the isobars. This is Friday evening. Okay, so it looks like the wind is going to be mostly north or north-northwest. And then by the time we get to Saturday morning, the isobar kind of bends a little bit, and the wind becomes more northwest. And there's always a tendency in cases like this where the winds wind up going more to the west. And usually once that happens, the temperatures stop falling. So the key to me is going to be keeping that wind from a northerly direction all night, Friday night into early Saturday morning. If that happens, then I think you could see temperatures go to 0 or even below 0 in New York City, and for Long Island, and certainly for you. And yeah, it's going to be brutal up in central and northern New England. I mean, we're talking about temperatures in some places that are going to be minus 20 to minus 25, even minus 30 before when they hit bottom on Saturday morning.
Well, the European has been for the longest time. I was kind of half thinking that it would start backing off on the cold, but it's just cold now as some of the forecast it was putting out 2, 3, 4 days ago. If I took the European at face value, then where I am in western Putnam County, where I am, it's going to be something like 7 degrees below zero on Saturday morning.
Well, and the European has the air mass 60 meters colder when you look at it from the standpoint of thicknesses. And it also, now here's the new, this is 1 a.m. All right, so the new GFS only goes out to 1 a.m. on Saturday morning. So at 1 a.m., Joe, New York City is 9, Philadelphia is 11, Islip is 7, Bridgeport 1, Hartford minus 5, Waterbury minus 6, Poughkeepsie minus 5, and minus 9 in Boston. Worcester minus 12 in Worcester, and 8 below in Albany. Now, I go back to the 12Z run. I did notice the overnight runs actually were a little warmer, and then all of a sudden the day run came in and went colder again. So on the day run lows, Joe, was, I guess, when they have a minus sign in front of the 0, because sometimes they don't. So maybe they're sort of leaning to minus 0.5 or something. But they've got 1 below at Islip, 2 below at Yonkers, 6 below in, these are the forecast mins, 6 below at Bridgeport, 10 below in Poughkeepsie, 11 below in Providence and Hartford, 16 below in Worcester, 12 below in Boston, 14 below in Albany. And just to make matters worse, I'm going to go to the 24, and these maps are courtesy of Pivotal Weather. I'm going to go to the 24-hour max, and we're going to go to Sunday. Okay? So let's go to Sunday.
Look at that.
Hold on.
Look at that.
This is Sunday at Sunday, 1 p.m. Okay. By 7 p.m., these are the max temperatures for Sunday. New York City, 44. Okay? Can you imagine it's going to go below 0 and then go to 44 36 hours later? That's insane.
Well, you know what it is, Joe, and we don't often see this. It's the rare Chinook wind off of the Appalachians.
Yes.
Now, we heard about that in the Rockies, but this is like, it is, in a way, it's going to be like living in the Rockies, because this is something they see periodically in the wintertime. Bitter cold temperatures one day, and all of a sudden it bounces right up again, 30, 40 degrees because of compression. The air comes gliding on down the lee slope of the Rockies, gets warmed by compression effects, and the temperatures respond by going up 30, 40 degrees.
Yeah,
Chinook meaning snow eater. The only problem with this is there's no snow to eat away, but we will see the jump in the temperatures.
And there's this cold air mass is literally coming down into New England and down into the coastal plain, because you go west from Pittsburgh west through all of this. There's no cold. I mean, they're going to get a little bit of cold air, but there's no cold air back. There's going to be no cold air back in the Great Lakes or in the plains. Nothing. I mean, it's just going to warm up there. Yeah, exactly. If there were another cold air mass to the northwest that was going to come in early next week, then you probably wouldn't see warm-ups like this. But this is insane. Boston's forecast to go was 11 below or 12 below 0, and then they're at 43. I mean, these are just absolute insane temperature changes that are going to occur from Saturday to Sunday. People are going to have their heads are going to be spinning.
May I ask a question? In the lower right corner of this map that you're showing, out over the ocean, is that orange or color implying that the temperatures, let's say 200 miles
60.
southeast of New York, will be in the 60s,
Yeah,
60 degrees?
I have the cursor over that. That's 60.
And that's the same place where tonight they may experience, a couple of inches of snow.
That's correct.
Right. All right.
You were the last correct questioner. Please select. The other thing I would say is Friday. If you're on Long Island and if you're in southeastern New England with this north wind coming off the Gulf of Maine into southeastern New England, coming off Long Island Sound, particularly in central and eastern Long Island, I think this is a candidate for some ocean effect, or Long Island Sound effect snow.
Yeah.
And sometimes you could get a coating to an inch or two out of it in scattered, patchy areas. You have to be in the right place at the right time for that. But you can see it here on the surface map. I'm going to just widen this out. Let's go to the full U.S. map. So, there's your high coming down. Okay. But then behind it is all this warm air. I mean, look at that red line pushing up into Iowa. That's warm air that's pushing up in that direction. The high goes out. You've got this screaming southwest wind. Look at the isobars back through Pennsylvania and New York State. I mean, you go from this with this pressure gradient ahead of it with the north wind, and then you go to this with the screaming southwest wind behind it. Yeah, it just warms up. Now, and that's it. I mean, you got a storm that's coming into the west with some snow and rains down through California going into next week. A low that goes to the lakes. It's no big deal. I mean, who cares? Cold front that comes here on Wednesday. Barely a shower with that. You start to see the buildup of snow in New Mexico and North Texas and up into southwest Colorado. Also snows up in the Sierra Nevadas and then northward up into the northern Rockies and the Pacific. Actually, it has even some snow at Seattle, Joe, which you would expect in a pattern like this. And, there's your low in southeast Colorado on Thursday. Meanwhile, in the east, there's some kind of, this Great Lakes low on Wednesday strengthens a bit when it goes into eastern Canada. So you get sort of a quick shot of chilly air for a day or so, and then that goes away. Then you get another low that goes to the lakes next Saturday, the February 11th, and that's all rain except way up in upstate New York and in Maine, and then that goes out, and then it gets a little chilly behind it, but no big deal. I mean, there's no Arctic air. There's none. After this winter is going to be known, Mr. Rayo, by two Arctic air masses that covered all of about 5 days worth of weather, and that's it.
Right.
What do you think about
it? You've heard about the year without a summer, 1816. This is the year without a winter, at least in the northeastern part of the country.
Well, unless you're way up in upstate New York, if you're north of I-90,
I was going to correct myself on that because Buffalo has received far more snow than they normally would in an entire winter already because of those two gigantic lake effect storms that occurred in the very early part of the season back in November.
And how localized was that? I mean, really, when you look at who got the snow from both those events, it was in a very narrow band.
Right.
You had to be, you had to have the fortune or misfortune, depending on how you see winter weather, of being in the right or wrong place at the right or wrong time. So have I covered myself now? Have I made myself completely Switzerland here by saying it that way?
Yes, I think you have. It's the best that we can do with what little we've got to work with.
That's correct.
And what little we're gonna have to work with over the next couple of weeks, apparently.
And that is also correct. So, on that note, let us now pray and play Briller Jeopardy. Do you have it or do I? I have one. I think
you have it. Yes.
So we're going to do February records here, folks. February records in New York City Central Park, the highest temperature ever. And it comes with an asterisk, too. The highest temperature ever recorded in February in Central Park. Mr. Rayo, can you venture a guess? You should know this.
75. I believe we did get to 75 once. Not 80, but 75. That's
We're seeing various. Well, Christina Petey is pushing the envelope with 113. Okay. Most folks are in the 70s, and Tyler Fienga is already hit it exactly and so is Michael Azara, 78. And the reason why I said you should know this, Joe, because I remember this very well. It was February 21st, 2018, that it hit 78, and it was 19 the next morning, and we had blizzard warnings, and we got a foot plus out of it.
You talk about your wacko off the scale weather. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I guess it shouldn't be that unusual to go from 11 below to 44. What was the lowest temperature ever recorded in Central Park? Well, this should be an easy one.
Well, it's been repeated over and over and over again over the years. Minus 15, February 9th, 1934.
That is correct. So we'll just move on to the next question. What was the lowest daytime high? The lowest daytime high ever in Central Park in February?
I think it's probably, it might be single digits. Might be something like 8 degrees or whatever.
Well, Johnny Quest says 7. Mark G has come up with the correct answer, and so has William Uber, Joe. 4.
Wow.
And that was on February 5th, 1918. And what was the most snow ever to fall for the entire month of February? And I think we just mentioned that the other day.
We just had that a few years ago. So it was something like some ridiculous figure like 33 or 34 inches. And when was it? And what was that in 20?
Now, Rosemary Osborne, it was not 20 feet. No. Teresa De Silva says 42. Jacqueline Baker, 42. Steve LaPointe, 33. Up, Helen Bertona. Gets it right. 36. Well, I'm going to round it off. So if you said 36 or 37, I will accept both as the correct answer. It's 36.9. 36.9 back in 2010. I think this is a night where we should hold on a second. That's the wrong one. Trying to find her. Where is she? Oh, there she is. I think this is a night, Joe, that we should bring out Mrs. Bundy. Hold on. I tried to do that, and guess what I did? I eliminated myself. There's Mrs. Bundy. Where did I go? There we go. We'll bring out Mrs. Every once in a while, Mrs. Bundy does want to. Every once in a while, she wants to come out. So we brought her onto the screen there. So anyhow, Tom Contino asked the most important question that has been asked on the chat board in a long, long time. He says, "How did my lamb chops turn out?" And no, I did not grill them. I did them. They turned out great. I did them in the cast iron skillet on high heat with in olive oil and red wine, and they were insane. That's how good they were. Okay, so just remember that.
Now, can I just ask? Let me ask a question. Is Joe Cioffi's lamb chops worth 3 more likes? If they are, hit that button now.
I made the same way because I went to Aldi's and they had pork steaks. Okay. And they're huge. They're like, you can get two good meals out of them. And they were about half an inch thick. And I did them also in the cast iron skillet with red wine on high heat, medium high heat, and olive oil, and rosemary, sage, paprika, granulated garlic, coarse kosher salt. Takes about 5 minutes on each side. I blackened them, which I really love, and they were outstanding. So there. The only thing, Tom, is just a little advice. Let the meat, if you do it in a cast iron skillet, let it cook. Don't put the wine in for 2 minutes. After 2 minutes, put and you only need a little bit. Just put a little bit of wine on the top, and then when you flip it, put a little bit of wine on the top. Because if you put the wine in too early, and you put too much of it, the alcohol will burn off, and you'll shoot flames up and set your house on fire. So you want to be careful with that. Okay.
What?
Who did you say goodbye to?
Oh, were you able to hear that?
I hear everything you do. Everything.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Really?
Yes.
Well, that was I had AOL open, so I just said, okay, let's close that since we're coming to the end.
Yes, we are coming to the end, and we got our 100 likes.
I see that we're up to 110, and Jacqueline Baxter says you guys should do cooking in 5. I'll tell you what, Jacqueline, Joe could do the cooking in 5. I'll do the ptomaine poisoning in 5 because I barely know how to boil water. If it weren't for my lovely wife who does everything,
right? You'd starve to death.
I would starve to death. Oh. Well, I wouldn't starve to death. I would just go to ShopRite or Acme or whatever and just get cans of SpaghettiOs, and I'd probably be sustained on that.
Yuck, yuck, yuck.
And I also have. This was given to me. When was this given to me? Oh, for my birthday. Oh, wait a minute. This expires. This is not good anymore, Joe.
What is it?
This is a coupon that my daughter gave me. I think it was on my birthday. And
when did it expire? At the end of the year?
Right here. It expires 12/31/22. I'll have to tell her that.
Well, you might want to get an extension.
An extension or whatever.
Yeah.
KFC on me, according to my daughter. So, all right. So I'll have to clarify that.
All right. So look, just to remind everybody one last time, there is no show tomorrow night. There will be a show, I think, on Thursday. I think we may wind up doing a show on Friday. At least we could talk about how exciting, watch the thermometer drop a degree or 2 an hour. And then no show on Saturday, and no show this coming Sunday. All right? So This is always, since there's nothing going on, it's a good time for Joe and I to take a bit of a breather because, doing a show like this 5 days a week is tough. It's not easy. It's as talented as Joe and I both are. Okay, and we both know what great talents we are. We do need to recharge our batteries, do we not?
Yes.
All right. On that note. We better. The humility is overwhelming at the moment. So on that note, let us now say goodbye. Thank you, everyone, for being here, and we will see you on Thursday at 7:35.
We will. Bye.
Nighty night.